Hello, hi and namaskara. My name is Kirtan and I am a second year student studying in a government medical college. Today I will be going to talk about the topic regulation of the blood pressure. It is one of the biggest chapters in the Cardiovascular Physiology unit. So I will be dividing this topic into two parts. So in the first part of this video, I will be talking about the short-term regulation of the blood pressure. So let's start this topic. So before starting the topic, if you haven't subscribed to my video or channel, please subscribe for more videos like this. So let's start. So in the regulation of blood pressure, we can again divide it into short-term regulation and the long-term regulation. And under the short-term regulation, there are neural mechanisms, vascular mechanism, hormonal mechanism. And in the long-term regulation, there are renal mechanism and the hormonal mechanism. So some hormones also participate in the long-term regulations. So in the short-term regulation, neural mechanism is mainly involved. So under the neural mechanism, there are again many factors which affect the neural mechanism. They are autonomic regulation, medullary control, hypothalamic control, cortical control, and the reflex regulation, which are nothing but the baroreceptor reflex, chemoreceptor reflex, Cushing reflex, somatosympathetic reflex, arterial stretch reflex, and the brain bridge reflex. So this reflex regulation I will be talking in the second part of this video. So in this part we will be talking about the other neural mechanisms and also the vascular and hormonal mechanism of the short-term regulation. So let's start with the autonomic regulation under the short-term regulation. The autonomic regulation is mainly influenced by the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerves. And under the sympathetic nerves, there is sympathetic vasoconstrictor system and the sympathetic vasodilator system. So mainly here, the sympathetic nerves plays the major role because it supplies the blood vessels directly. The parasympathetic nervous systems also plays a role by decreasing the heart rate and the cardiac output and thereby decreasing the blood pressure. But the sympathetic nervous system plays the major role here. So under this, as we talked, vasoconstrictor system and the vasodilator system of the sympathetic system, let's differentiate it. So the vasoconstrictor system, it is supplied by the noradrenergic fibers, and in the vasodilator system, it is supplied by the sympathetic cholinergic fibers. So this vasoconstrictor system of the sympathetic nerves originate from the intermediolateral horn of the spinal cord, and this vasodilator system, they originate from the frontal cortex and rely in the hypothalamus and the midbrain. From the midbrain, it travels through the medulla but does not realize in the medulla. This is further. This is after the midbrain. It does not rely in medulla, and it also terminates in the intermediolateral horn of the spinal cord and terminates in intermediolateral horn of the spinal cord. Horn of spinal cord. Many students complain that this topic or chapter is very difficult because it's very lengthy. But if you make the proper notes, which is systematic like this, like differentiating the factors, you can understand it very easily. So for my notes, you can check my Telegram channel. I'll be providing the link in the description below. So the next differentiating factor is that in the vasoconstrictor system, they have the basal rate of the tonic discharge. But in the vasodilator system, there is no basal rate of the basal rate of the tonic discharge. So the basal rate of the tonic discharge means nothing but the constant rhythmic supply to the blood vessels, which keeps it contracting, constricting or dilating. So the vasoconstrictor system produces various effects, that is vasoconstriction, venoconstriction, cardiac stimulation, and also secretion of the catecholamines from the adrenal medulla. Whereas in the vasodilator system of the sympathetic nervous system, it only produces vasodilation. So this is the autonomic regulation under the short-term regulation. Now let's talk about the medullary control. So the medullary control is mediated by the cardiovascular centers. These cardiovascular centers are present in the medulla itself. They can again be divided into vasomotor center and the cardioinhibitory centers. The vasomotor center stimulates and increases the BP, whereas the cardioinhibitory centers decreases the BP. So the vasomotor centers. It is present in the rostral ventrolateral medulla area in the medulla. It provides the tonic excitatory drive to the spinal cord neurons. So here, as we talked that they have the basal rate of tonic discharge, that is vasoconstrictor system. It is provided by the medulla, that is what vasomotor center. So it receives various inputs from baroreceptors, chemoreceptors, ascending pathways, vagus nerves, etc., which either inhibit or stimulate the action of the vasomotor center. The stimulation of the vasomotor center leads to vasoconstriction and also cardio acceleration, which thereby increases the BP. The vasomotor centers play a main role in increasing the BP. Whereas if you see in the cardioinhibitory center, it is formed by three areas, that is nucleus tractus solitarius, or we can call it as NTS, nucleus ambiguus, and dorsal motor nucleus of vagus. So this nucleus tractus solitarius plays a major role. Vagus nerve originates from it and it helps in inhibiting the heart functions. And also local inhibitory neurons also originate from this nucleus tractus solitarius, which inhibits the vasomotor center. It laterally inhibits the vasomotor center. Its stimulation results in the bradycardia and also decrease in the cardiac output and also vasodilatation. So it thereby decreases the BP. So this is about the medullary control. Now talking about the hypothalamic control. Since you know that the hypothalamus contains anterior part and the posterior part. So the anterior part produces hypotension and the bradycardia, whereas the posterior lateral part produces hypertension and the tachycardia. So these are the 2 points. You can remember this and it is very important. Anterior part produces hypotension and bradycardia, and posterior lateral part produces hypertension and tachycardia. This can be asked as MCQs. So the hypothalamus controls the cutaneous blood flow and thereby influences the blood pressure. About this hypothalamus, we will be studying in the CNS system. I will be covering that unit also. The next one is the cortical control. It directly does not influence the blood pressure, but influences through many centers, like the limbic cortex. It influences through the vasomotor center via the hypothalamus. So this limbic cortex, which is the part of the cortex, influences the vasomotor center, which is present in the medulla, via the hypothalamus. So the next mechanism in the short-term regulation is the vascular mechanisms. The reflex regulation I will be talking in the second part of this video. So under the vascular mechanisms, there are again two subtypes, that are capillary fluid shift and the stress relaxation. So let's talk about it one by one. So in the capillary fluid shift, so when there is acute shock of the human body, the blood volume decreases. So when the volume of the blood decreases, the hydrostatic pressure, so when volume of blood decreases due to various causes like shock, the hydrostatic pressure also decreases in the blood vessels. Hydrostatic pressure also decreases. So due to this capillary fluid shift, there is shift of fluid from the interstitial fluid into the blood vessel. So there is shift of interstitial fluid into the blood vessel. So thereby it's also called capillary fluid shift into the capillaries. So this compensates the blood volume and therefore it compensates the cardiac output and thereby increasing or maintaining the normal blood pressure. So therefore it maintains normal blood pressure. Normal blood pressure. So in the capillary fluid shift, almost 300 ml is shifted from the interstitial fluid. So this is about the capillary fluid shift mechanism under the vascular mechanism. So now we'll be talking about the stress relaxation under the vascular mechanism. So here, when the blood pressure increases, the vessel wall stretches and causes the distension of the blood vessel. So to counteract this, the blood vessel relaxes due to the stress relaxation. The blood vessel relaxes and thereby causes vasodilation, which decreases the blood pressure. So I forgot to tell one point, that in the capillary fluid shift and also in the stress relaxation, there can be reverse capillary fluid shift and reverse stress relaxation. So when there is increase in the volume of blood, the hydrostatic pressure increases. So therefore there will be shift of blood volume from the capillaries into the interstitial fluid. So that is called as the reverse capillary fluid. And in the stress relaxation, there will be reverse stress relaxation when the blood pressure decreases. So when the blood pressure decreases, the vessel wall does not stretch and therefore the stretchability is lost. So therefore in the reverse stress relaxation, the vessel wall stretches. So after the vascular mechanisms, let's talk about the hormonal mechanisms under the short-term regulation of the blood pressure. So here I will talk about the main important hormones which regulate the short-term regulation of the blood pressure. The first one is the catecholamines. These are released from the adrenal medulla. It increases the heart rate and blood pressure and thereby increases the blood pressure. So the next one is the Renin-Angiotensin System. So here the angiotensinogen is converted to angiotensin 1 by the renin. This renin is produced by juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney. So after conversion of the angiotensin 1, it is again converted into angiotensin 2 by the angiotensin converting enzymes. So this angiotensin 2 helps in regulating the BP. So how does it helps in regulating the BP? It is a potent vasoconstrictor. It also increases the synthesis of the hormone, that is aldosterone from the adrenal cortex. This aldosterone helps in reabsorption of water and sodium ions, from the kidney and thereby maintaining the blood pressure. And sodium ions from kidney. It also increases the thirst, which regulates the intake of the water. It also directly helps in water reabsorption by acting in the proximal convoluted tubules of the kidney. Helps in reabsorption of water by acting in proximal convoluted tubules of the kidneys. So this renin-angiotensin system also helps in the longer acting mechanism. So the next one is the vasopressin. It is released from the posterior pituitary. It also increases the water reabsorption from the kidney, as we saw in the aldosterone and also in the angiotensin 2. It also causes vasoconstriction in supraphysiological concentration. So if provided more, this vasopressin also causes vasoconstriction. So this is the hormonal mechanism. So in this video, we talked about the short-term regulation of the blood pressure, and under that we mainly talked about the neural mechanism, that are autonomic regulation, medullary control, hypothalamic control, cortical control, and also the vascular mechanism, that is nothing but the capillary fluid shift and the stress relaxation. And in the hormonal mechanism we talked about many hormones. So that's it for this video. I'll upload the long-term regulation and also the reflex regulation in the next part of this video. If you found this video informative, please like, share and comment, and also don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. I'll provide the notes in my Telegram channel. You can check the link in the description below. Thank you.